Recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Rohrabacher, until 10 p.m.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I would ask my colleagues, do we want to be known as the Congress that killed the U.S. patent system, a patent system which has served the American people well for 220 years? I ask America, are you listening? Congress is once again talking about reforming the patent system. Last patent reform bill, which passed last year, was the American Invents Act, and it just went into effect earlier this year, and patent lawyers and courts and inventors are still trying to figure out the implications of that change, of the change that legislation made. And it was the most sweeping change in patent law in the history of our country. Yet, even before we are able to judge the effects of the America Invents Act, a new patent bill is being rammed through this House and through Congress. I wish I could focus simply on the bad provisions of this new bill, the Innovation Act. I like to think of it as the Anti-Innovation Act, H.R. 3309, which is expected to be on the floor later this week. But if the bill is bad, which we're talking about, the process being used to stifle debate and ram this down the congressional throats here on the floor is even worse. In the one Judiciary Committee hearing, witness after witness strongly recommended moving forward slowly and warned of unintended consequences. It only takes a few minutes to consider each provision of this bill to see that, although it may be aimed at a single thorn in the side of mega electronic companies, it will create much more pain in other industries, in higher education, and especially to individual inventors. In the rush to get H.R. 3309 onto the floor so quickly, it has not been even one single day between when this bill passed the Judiciary Committee, thus becoming available to members of the House once it passes the Judiciary Committee. And there's only not even been one single day of legislative business for members to consider and submit amendments to the Rules Committee for this important legislation. Not one single full day of legislative work done, and now this is being rammed down our throats. And, of course, the Thanksgiving holiday happened right after they passed it through the committee. The holiday was right in the middle of a very short timeline, which, of course, virtually guaranteed that all members and most of the staff would not be in Washington, D.C. Thus, they passed it right before we left town, and this schedule suggests what? It suggests that the fix was in. The clear message to little inventors: give thanks for your intellectual property rights because you may not have them this time next year. Well, this isn't just about rapid, it's also about covert. It seems that we have to pass this bill to find out what's in it. That hasn't worked well for America in the past, and it sure shouldn't be happening again on our watch. I'm calling on my friends and my colleagues who haven't had time to fully understand the implications of this legislation, and that means almost everybody in this body. And we're just back today from the holiday break. If they haven't had time to fully understand the implications of this legislation, join me in demanding a postponement of this vote until after the holiday season, which will give us all sufficient time to consult with our constituents, with experts, and to better understand this legislation and the implications it will have for industry, for American progress, for American inventors and innovators. Now to the content of this legislation. We are told this bill is aimed at the threat of so-called patent trolls. These so-called villainous trolls are patent holders, or they are companies who represent patent holders. They are engaged in defending their rights given to them by ownership of that patent against the infringement of their patents by someone else. They own these patents. They are not just, and these are just as valid as any other patents granted by the Patent Office. But huge corporate infringers would have us believe that these patents are questionable, invalid, unworthy. They're unworthy of being a patent in the first place. Of course, these are the same corporations who have taken these patents and used them without paying the lawful fee that you would pay to someone who invented something that you are using. Well, this is not the case. They're not paying the inventor. And the patents that are being targeted by these multinational electronics firms as claiming that they're illegitimate, well, most of these were just the product of small inventors. And these small inventors, quite often, because they're up against mega multinational corporations, are without a means to defend their rights if these corporations arrogantly decide to violate those patent rights. And what makes these vilified patents different from the good patents that are owned by these very same large corporations? Well, the so-called patent troll, it happens to be, most of the time, patent troll are lawyers who take a case on to defend a little guy from theft. But that lawyer didn't invent it. That makes him bad because he's not working for a company, a big mega company that invents things. No, he's working for a little guy, or he has bought the rights the little man has so that he will get something out of his work. Well, being out for profit from technology, and from technology that someone did not, he or she, invent themselves, now that's really horrible. Doesn't that sound horrible? Well, no, it's not. We live in a society where people litigate to protect their rights, and there's nothing wrong and no we are being told that the patents in question that are going to be dealt with by this legislation, there's a hint that they're not legitimate patents. They're owned by patent trolls. Well, so much for calculated confusion. If the small inventor doesn't have the resources to enforce his or her patent, an individual or company can buy those rights, just like if they don't have the ability to farm, to plant on a farm. They can sell those rights, or they can create a partnership so that they can afford to actually protect themselves from being cheated out of their rightful compensation. I have spoken to independent inventors, conservative political organizations, the American, and all of these people are very suspicious, of course, of these changes that are being put into place in terms of a person's right to litigate to protect their individual rights. Well, to those people there are people who are very suspicious of this legislation. The American Bar Association, industry groups, you got biotech and pharma. These people and universities throughout our country who are opposed or at least very concerned about what's going to happen by H.R. 3309, the so-called Innovation Act, which, as I say, should better be called the Anti-Innovation Act. Well, we know that this bill, if passed, will further work against the interest, and it will further the disadvantages that the little guys have against deep-pocketed multinational corporations. And this is achieved in the guise, of course, of attacking patent trolls. See, they have used this word, demonized this word. I happen to have met a person, a man who was a big executive in a major corporation, a major electronics corporation, who was in the meeting with other electronics officials when they coined the phrase patent troll. They were doing it specifically to demonize these lawyers because they knew they couldn't go after the little inventor or the small inventor or the independent inventor. They couldn't go after him and demonize them, because they were stealing the patent rights from these individuals. So they'd go after the lawyer. And this person was saying, they went around the room with their ideas, what's the most heinous word we can do to help blind the people about what's really going on? He had suggested